I'm a trial attorney and have argued at thousands of trials and hearings over my 13-year career. If you can understand these advanced argument techniques that I'm about to share, you'll be able to argue like me. You want to argue like me because then you're more likely to get exactly what you want in any argument you make. Do you see what I just did there? In those 20 seconds, I used a very simple three-part argument formula known as the rhetorical triangle: ethos, logos, and pathos. The rhetorical triangle is an ancient argument technique created by Aristotle in 300 BC, and I'm going to explain how lawyers use it every day, and you can too. I just did it again. Credibility, or ethos, is the foundation of any persuasive argument. This is the first side of our rhetorical triangle. If your audience doesn't trust you, they're unlikely to be convinced by your argument, no matter how logical or emotional it may be. Establishing credibility involves demonstrating your expertise, honesty, and integrity. Here are the key techniques that you need to apply when you're making your own advanced arguments. Highlight your qualifications, experience, and knowledge that are relevant to the argument. Showing how you have previously dealt with a similar circumstance will prove your credibility. Maintain consistency in your statements and actions. If you contradict yourself, your credibility can quickly erode. Be honest about the strengths and weaknesses of your argument. Acknowledging counter-arguments and addressing them head-on can enhance your trustworthiness. Let's look back at the beginning of this video. Did you spot my ethos in my opening? By explaining that I'm a 13-year trial attorney with thousands of court arguments worth of experience, I demonstrated my credibility in arguing. How do you establish your credibility when making your arguments? Tell me about your ethos in the comments. I'm curious to know what kind of experts we have here. Logic, or logos, is the backbone of a compelling argument. This is the second side of our rhetorical triangle. Advanced argumentative techniques often involve using logical structures that are not only sound, but also strategically deployed to guide the audience through your reasoning. Start with a general principle and apply it to a specific case. For example, all people have the right to free speech. My client is a person. Therefore, my client has the right to free speech. Begin with specific evidence and draw a general conclusion. This is particularly useful in cases where you need to establish a pattern or trend. For example, after observing that the sun has risen in the east every day for the past week, we can conclude that the sun always rises in the east. Draw a comparison between two different things or situations based on their shared similarities to make an argument or inference. For example, just as a car needs regular maintenance to run smoothly, the human body requires proper care to stay healthy. Let's look back at the beginning of this video. Did you spot the logos in my opening? I explained that with your mastery of these advanced argument techniques, you'll be able to argue like me, an attorney. Logically, if you want to be an expert at arguing, then you want to be as good as a lawyer. When you're crafting your argument, be very clear with your logical message, because this is how you guide your audience towards your intended goal. While logic and credibility are vital, never underestimate the power of emotion in an argument. Emotional appeal, pathos, is the third and final side of our rhetorical triangle. Emotions can be a driving force in decision-making, and your skillful use of pathos can make your argument more compelling. Use narratives to make your argument more relatable and impactful. A well-told story can evoke emotions that facts and figures alone cannot. Haven't we all been captivated by a personal story from someone? Identify and use emotional triggers that resonate with your audience's values and experiences. Weave in an appeal to their sense of empathy, fairness, or desire to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Also, don't ignore the less noble emotional triggers in people. Their own greed and self-serving interest are also powerful motivators for your argument to tap into. Let's look back at the beginning of this video. Did you spot the pathos in my opening? I explained that you want to argue like me because then you're more likely to get exactly what you want in any argument you make. What emotional appeals do you find helpful when making arguments? Which ones do you think are overused?
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
Now that you understand the value of the rhetorical triangle, let's tie it all together. The structure of your argument plays a significant role in how well it is received. Even the most compelling points can lose their impact if they're not presented in a clear, logical, and persuasive order. People tend to remember the first and last things they hear. That's why politicians race to be the first to announce their candidacy for office. And also why we always hear about the October surprise. Always remember to place your strongest arguments at the beginning and end of your presentation. Ensure your argument flows logically from one point to the next. Each point should build on the last, creating a cohesive narrative. Even in this section, did you notice how I referenced the rhetorical triangle before moving on to discussing structuring? That's called logical flow. Use clear, concise language to guide your audience through your argument. Phrases like, "First I will demonstrate," and "in conclusion," can help keep your audience on track. This is especially important when you're changing topics in your argument because it helps the mind to know that you're closing one chapter in the book and opening a new one. Mastering the art of the argument involves more than just presenting facts and hoping for the best. It requires a deep understanding of your audience, the strategic use of credibility, logic, and emotion, and the ability to implement persuasive structuring. It also requires the effective use of the crack method. If you don't know what the crack method is, then you haven't heard my first 4 tips on how to argue like a lawyer. Remember, the goal in any argument is not just to win, but to persuade, to bring others to see things from your perspective, and ultimately to take your side. Happy arguing!